Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. So, two Northern California members of the 3%er militia group were arrested last year, and they were charged with various crimes. And this case is what I refer to as January 6th adjacent, because it really did stem from the election and the election fraud claims that Trump and his minions were making. And it really ramped up after January 6th. So here's the deal. The Vallejo Sun news outlet reported that there were two friends, 45-year-old Ian Rogers and 37-year-old Jarrod Copeland. And they repeatedly texted each other following the 2020 election, and they kept talking about violent actions they wanted to take. That's how it started. And then it quickly escalated into somewhat of a domestic terrorist scheme. And again, this is 100% due to Trump's lies about the stolen election. So in the days that followed the 2020 election, prosecutors said that Rogers and Copeland were discussing various targets for violence. For example, on November 25th of 2020, Rogers texted Copeland and said, quote, "I think right now we attack Democrats, Molotov cocktails and gasoline. I think we should hit the governor's mansion. It's empty, no casualties." Copeland responded to that text and said, quote, "That's the best target, I think, too." Then a couple days later, they talked about changing the target to the Democratic headquarters in Sacramento, California. Rogers wrote, quote, "Take a brick, break a window, pour gas in, and light." But then Copeland reminded him that that building is pretty close to the California Highway Patrol office. So Rogers changed the plan again, and he said, quote, 150 rounds shot into the building will destroy it. Copeland replied affirmatively, and then Rogers wrote, quote, "And a couple of pipe bombs. I say if you're down, you throw a brick into the windows, then pipe bombs. You retreat to escape vehicle, then I unload 2 drums into the building, then we split. 275 drums only takes 15 seconds each." Copeland responded with, quote, "That sounds good. I like it." Then on November 30th of 2020, Copeland texted Rogers again, and he warned, quote, "If they don't listen to Trump, they will hear us." In another text, he wrote, quote, "We don't need to win over 50,000 people. We need 500 pissed off patriots that want America back." And Rogers wrote to Copeland, quote, "I hope 45 goes to war. If he doesn't, I will." Then in early January of 2021, Rogers told Copeland, quote, "I want to blow up a Democrat building bad." Copeland responded, quote, "I agree. Plan attack." But like I said, the Capitol attack seemed to really be the impetus. It seemed to really be the tipping point for these guys, because it appears that they were inspired by what they witnessed on January 6th, because their words started becoming even more violent and they appeared to be planning even more. So according to transcripts, Rogers texted Copeland and he said, quote, "I say we storm the Capitol armed on the 19th. We got to organize and do it. Mobilize the 3%. Copeland then replied and said, quote, "Copy." Rogers also texted Copeland and said, quote, "After the 20th, we go to war," which obviously is a reference to Biden's inauguration. And Copeland confided in Rogers that he and his wife were watching the Capitol attack on TV. And while they were watching it, his wife was crying. And she said, quote, "Please don't leave me. I don't know what to do without you." But Rogers and Copeland had basically, they convinced themselves that Donald Trump's fairy tale about the election was real and that it was actually worth dying for. This is how far gone these people are. On January 7th, Copeland allegedly told Rogers, quote, "I have 5 nieces and a nephew. That's enough for me to lay down my life for." Now, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when I get to the end of this. You're going to laugh. Okay, so he's saying, "Oh, I have nieces and nephews. I'm going to lay down my life for them," right? Rogers responded and he said, quote, "Sad we will need to die, but it will probably happen. Are you ready? And Copeland replied, I have the gear and the toys. So yeah, mentally, yeah, I'm there, I believe. And when Rogers asked Copeland if he's ready to leave his wife, Copeland stated, quote, she knows how I am and she knows I will put myself in harm's way for what I believe in. Again, keep this all in mind as I get to the end, because you guys are going to have such a laugh. So after Trump was removed from Twitter and Facebook, these two men started talking about then attacking the offices of both of those social media companies. So in a text message on January 7th, Rogers apparently used an anti-Semitic slur in reference to Mark Zuckerberg, and he told Copeland that the Democratic headquarters should be their first target, followed by Facebook and Twitter. And Copeland texted Rogers saying, quote, I got war paint on my ding-ding, and I'm ready for battle. I mean, so many questions. How did it get there? Why? What does that have to do with battle? Is that what you're using to shoot? I don't think it's going to work very well. Anyway, so Rogers replied, he said, quote, time for war, bro. I see no other way. And Copeland wrote back, quote, I agree. However, they never got the chance to follow through on the attacks because someone tipped off the FBI and Napa County sheriffs, and Rogers' home and his office were raided on January 15th of 2021. So the authorities went in, they found that he had amassed 49 guns, including he had numerous fully automatic weapons, not semi-automatic, fully automatic. He also had 5 pipe bombs, and he had materials and instructions that they say he would need to make additional bombs. They also raided his safe, and they turned up Nazi memorabilia. They found a Nazi flag, a knife that had a swastika on it, and German items, they said, which were from the World War II era. And then they found, this is very interesting, a fake credit card. It said it was a, quote, white privilege credit card, and it was issued to scot-free. And the fake credit card number just kept repeating the sequence 0045. But wait, I mean, I thought that they said that white privilege doesn't exist. Isn't that what they keep saying? That's just made up by the left? Anyway, Copeland heard about Rogers' arrest. He heard about the raid, and then he went to one of the leaders of their group, one of the 3%er leaders. And based on the advice of that leader, he wiped his phone of all communications with Rogers. However, his home was next. His home was raided the very next day, and police found that he had several ghost guns, which, if you're not familiar, they're guns that are virtually untraceable because the parts are sold separately, or sometimes they're sold in kits, and then the owner puts it together themselves. So there's no registration required. There's no serial number. So you can't trace this weapon. In addition to the ghost guns, they also found that he had 2 pistols, a handgun, a .22 caliber rifle, an AR-15, a go bag, and $1,200 worth of anabolic steroids. I mean, it's all making sense now, isn't it? These guys are roided up, their junk has shrunk, and they're racist and angry. I mean, what a cocktail. What could go wrong with that cocktail? So, and check this out, you guys. I found this photo. This is something that Copeland posted on his Facebook profile. So on the left, for people listening on the podcast, you have a photo of him in the past, normal guy. And then on the right, you have him posing for a selfie in a mirror, Mr. Roid Rage, in a tank top. Anyway, so Rogers was arrested, and he was charged with the federal crime of unlawful possession of an unregistered destructive device. He was also charged with several state crimes for violating gun regulations in California. And then as for Copeland, he was arrested, and then he was released 3 days later on charges of selling or transferring a handgun without a license, as well as possession of anabolic steroids. in July of last year, the two were indicted in federal court for conspiring to maliciously destroy a building by fire. So both of them were charged with that. Rogers was additionally charged in this indictment with possession of pipe bombs and machine guns. And then Copeland was hit with an additional charge of destroying evidence. And Copeland was then rearrested. He was arrested again just a couple weeks later in mid-July for possession of zip ties and because he purchased more steroids. Got to have those roids. So Rogers remains in jail. He's been in jail since he was arrested. He's expected to take a plea deal this week. No word, though, on Copeland's case and the status of that case. But I should also mention Copeland joined the Army in 2013, and he was arrested just 5 months later for desertion. So he just took off. So they bring him back. He's arrested, brought back to the Army. He's arrested again in October of 2016 for the same thing. And then that's when he was booted out of the Army on an other than honorable discharge. And this is the road rage guy. So this is why I was saying, keep all of this in mind. So I got to go die for my nieces and my nephew. It's time to die. It's time for war. But he runs away from the Army. So he's great, isn't he? And then Rogers isn't any better. Oh my gosh. Okay. So here's the deal on Rogers. According to the Vallejo Sun, Rogers divorced his first wife in 2015. He goes on Facebook and he posts about what a lazy piece of shit she is. So what a class act, right? He then remarries in 2020. And that same year, the police were called out to his house twice for domestic abuse. The first one, you could argue it wasn't that big of a deal. Like the wife, I guess she was here in the country on I don't know if a green card or something. But he was threatening to take away all of her cell phone, her credit cards, and throw her out of the house. So she called the police. During the second call, though, this was in August of 2020. So this is just months before he starts making all these threats and saying talking about all this violence he wants to perpetrate. His wife has a 10-year-old son. The 10-year-old son runs across to a neighbor's house to call for help. So the neighbor calls 911 and tells the police that Rogers dragged his wife across the driveway. The neighbor said, quote, he was chasing the lady out of his house and dragged her to the floor. And then the neighbor confirmed that Rogers was a heavy drinker. And the police report stated that Rogers, apparently this is what the wife reported, that Rogers got angry at his wife because she was asking him about talking to another woman. That's always a good sign, isn't it? Also, in the report, it said that Rogers' wife had a 1-inch gash on her head. She had dried blood in her hair and a road rash on her right shoulder. So Rogers was arrested that day, but the DA's office refused to prosecute due to, quote, lack of evidence. Seriously? You have 2 eyewitnesses. You've got the neighbor and her kid. And then you have physical evidence that required that they take her to the hospital, but there's a lack of evidence. This is exactly why there are so many women who are murdered in this country by their domestic partners because of piece of shit, sexist DAs like this who don't give a damn. And this is also why these sociopaths like these guys just keep upping the ante. They keep committing worse and worse crimes because we have this patriarchal system that teaches them, oh, you're white men. There are no consequences for you. Do you think in a million years, if those cops showed up and it was a black man who had dragged his wife across the driveway and she had blood in her hair and a 1-inch gash in her hair, that he would not have been charged? It's unreal. So, of course, these guys now are saying, oh, we didn't mean anything by it. It was all talk. This was all hyperbole. We had no intention of committing any crimes or committing any violent acts. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You just beat up your wife for fun, but you wouldn't go and hurt a complete stranger, would you? Anyway, guys, I will definitely keep an eye on these cases and I'll let you know when they resolve. But Donald Trump inspired a lot, didn't he? And it wasn't good inspiration. I'm just saying. All right. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care. I'll talk with you soon.